Jake Morrison stood in the center of the massive council chamber. The room was bigger than a football stadium. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows that went up to the ceiling. Their eyes were all focused on him and the small group of humans behind him. The chamber walls were made of some kind of glowing crystal. Strange symbols moved across the surface like living things. The air smelled like metal and ozone. Jake had been in this room many times before, but today felt different. Today felt dangerous. Commander Lisa Brooks stood to his right. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. Her military uniform was perfectly clean and pressed. She watched the aliens with the calm look of someone who had seen many battles. Her hand rested casually near her sidearm. Though weapons were supposedly forbidden in the council chamber, Dr. Alex Turner was on Jake's left. He was younger than the other two, with messy, blonde hair and thick glasses. His tablet computer was clutched tightly in his hands. The screen showed charts and numbers that told a story the aliens did not want to hear. Alex looked nervous, but his mind was sharp as a blade. The three humans had traveled here from Earth in response to what the council called an urgent meeting. But Jake knew better. This was not a meeting. This was a trial. And humanity was the one being judged. At the front of the chamber sat the High Council. These were the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Each one represented a different alien race. Each one had ruled over millions of worlds for thousands of years. And each one now looked at the humans like they were a problem that needed to be solved. Counselor Vexthara rose from her seat. She was a Zelfin, which meant she looked like a giant snake with arms. Her scales were dark green and they caught the light as she moved. Her eyes were yellow with black slits down the middle. When she spoke, her voice was like the sound of wind through dead leaves. Ambassador Morrison, she said. Her tongue flicked out to taste the air. Humanity has been a member of the Galactic Council for 23 years. In that time, your species has grown strong. Perhaps too strong. Jake kept his face blank. Inside, his heart was beating fast. He had expected this day would come eventually. Humans had always been different from the other races. They were younger, faster to learn, and quicker to adapt. The other species had noticed. Your ships now patrol sectors that were once protected by council forces, Vexthara continued. Your scientists solve problems that our greatest minds could not crack. Your merchants control trade routes that have existed for millennia. This growth concerns us. Lisa shifted slightly beside Jake. It was a small movement, but Jake caught it. She was getting ready for trouble. Lisa had fought in 3 different wars before joining the diplomatic corps. She could read a room better than most people could read books. Counselor Zephyroon stood up next. He was a hydran, which meant he looked like a dolphin that had learned to walk on 2 legs. His skin was gray and wet, and he wore a breathing mask that let him survive in the dry air of the chamber. Water dripped from his body onto the floor. The human expansion has disrupted the balance we have maintained for 3,000 years, Zephyroon said. His voice came through a translator device that made him sound like he was speaking underwater. Your colonies now outnumber those of races that have been exploring space since before your son was born. Alex looked up from his tablet. His fingers moved quickly across the screen, calling up data files. Jake knew what those files contained. They showed the truth that the council did not want to admit. Human colonies were more successful because humans worked harder. Human trade was more profitable because humans were more honest. Human science advanced faster because humans were not afraid to try new things. The third member of the High Council to speak was Counselor Thekmor. He was a Corvan, a race that looked like walking rocks with too many arms. His voice sounded like gravel being crushed. Your military grows stronger each year. Your ships use technology that some of our races do not fully understand. This makes the council nervous. Jake almost smiled at that. The Corvans had been building spaceships for 5,000 years, but their designs had not changed in all that time. They made their ships the same way their ancestors had, with the same weapons and the same weaknesses. When humans started building ships, they had studied every design in the galaxy and then made something better. We are not here to discuss The past, Vextara said. Her yellow eyes focused on Jake like lasers. We are here to discuss the future. The Council has made a decision about humanity's place in galactic civilization. This was it. Jake could feel the tension in the room like electricity before a storm. Even the aliens in the upper seats had stopped their quiet conversations. Everyone was listening now. Humanity will surrender control of all military vessels to Council oversight, Vextara announced. You will dismantle your defensive installations beyond your home system. All technological research will be supervised by Council scientists. All colonial expansion will halt immediately. The chamber was completely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Beside him, Lisa's breathing had changed slightly. She was getting angry, but she was controlling it. Alex had stopped looking at his tablet and was staring at the High Council, with his mouth slightly open. Furthermore, Vextara continued, humanity will withdraw from all independent trade agreements. All human merchants will operate under Council licenses. All human colonies outside the Sol system will accept Council governors. Jake understood what was happening. The Council was not offering humanity a partnership. They were demanding surrender. Complete and total surrender. In return, Zephyroon added, humanity will remain a member of the Galactic Council. You will retain the right to participate in Council decisions. Your people will continue to enjoy the protection and benefits of galactic civilization. It was a pretty speech, but Jake heard what was really being said. Submit or be cast out. Kneel or be destroyed. Accept slavery or face exile. The alternative, Neckmore rumbled, is immediate expulsion from the Council. All trade agreements will be void. All defensive pacts will be cancelled. Humanity will face the galaxy alone. The threat was clear. Without the Council, Earth would be cut off from galactic civilization. No trade, no technology sharing, no protection from hostile alien races. It would be like going back to the Stone Age. Jake looked around the chamber. He saw fear in many of the alien faces, but he also saw something else. He saw guilt. They knew what they were asking was wrong. They knew that humanity had earned its place in the galaxy through hard work and fair dealing. But they were afraid, and fear made people do terrible things. The Council requires an answer, Vextara said. You have 48 hours to consult with your government. When you return, you will give us your decision. Will humanity accept our generous terms, or will you choose the path of isolation? Jake stood quietly for a long moment. The whole chamber waited for his response. Finally, he nodded once. The human delegation understands the Council's position, he said. His voice was calm and steady. We will need the full 48 hours to consult with our leadership. This is not a decision that can be made lightly. Of course, Vextara replied, but Jake could hear the satisfaction in her voice. She thought she had won. She thought humanity would have no choice but to submit. As the human delegation turned to leave the chamber, Jake caught Lisa's eye. She gave him the smallest possible nod. She understood. They all understood. The aliens thought they were forcing humanity to choose between slavery and exile, but they had made a mistake. They had forgotten the most important thing about humans. Humans always found a third option. Alex closed his tablet and followed Jake toward the exit. His mind was already working on the problem. 48 hours was not much time, but it might be enough, especially if they were careful. Lisa walked behind them both, her eyes scanning the chamber one last time. She was memorizing faces, counting numbers, noting weapons and security measures. Old habits from her military days. As they reached the massive doors of the Council chamber, Jake heard Vextara call out behind them. We hope humanity will make the wise choice, Ambassador Morrison. The galaxy is a dangerous place for those who stand alone. Jake did not turn around, but he smiled as he walked through the doors. The Council was about to learn something new about humans. They were about to learn that sometimes the wise choice was not the obvious one, and sometimes standing alone was exactly what made you strong. The human diplomatic ship Harmony floated in space like a small silver needle against the black. Inside the main conference room, Jake Morrison sat at the head of a metal table. The room was simple and clean, with white walls and bright lights. No decorations, no fancy alien crystals. Just the basic things humans needed to work. Lisa Brooks stood by the window, looking out at the stars. Her reflection showed a woman who was thinking hard about difficult choices. Alex Turner sat across from Jake, his tablet open and his fingers moving fast across the screen. Numbers and charts filled the display. Jake reached for the communication device in the center of the table. It was a small black box with a blue light on top. When he touched it, the light turned green. Quantum signals began racing across space, at speeds that made light look slow. Secure channel established, a computer voice announced. Connection to Earth in 3 seconds. The holographic display above the table flickered to life. 2 faces appeared as if they were sitting right there in the room. President Helen Carter looked tired but alert. Her gray hair was pulled back. In a tight bun, her blue eyes were sharp and focused. Next to her sat Admiral Ben Taylor, a man with broad shoulders and a face that had seen too many battles. "Report," President Carter said. Her voice was crisp and businesslike. Jake did not waste time with pleasantries. "They want us neutered, Madam President. Complete military disarmament. All our ships under their control. All our research supervised by their scientists. All our colonies governed by their people." Admiral Taylor leaned forward. His uniform was dark blue with silver stars on the shoulders. "What did you tell them?" "That we needed 48 hours to consider their generous offer," Jake replied. There was no humor in his voice, but his eyes showed what he really thought about the Council's demands. President Carter was quiet for a moment. Her fingers drummed silently on the table in front of her. Jake could almost see her mind working through the possibilities. She had been a senator for 20 years before becoming president. She knew how to think about complicated problems. "Admiral," she said finally, "implement Protocol Exodus. All human facilities, all personnel, all assets." "Everything comes home," Admiral Taylor nodded once. "Understood, Madam President. How long do we have?" 46 hours and counting," Jake answered. "They expect an answer when we return to the council chamber." Lisa turned away from the window. "They're scared," she said. I could see it in their faces. "They know what they're asking is wrong, but they're too afraid to stop." Alex looked up from his tablet. "The numbers support that assessment. Human colonies are outproducing alien settlements by an average of 40%. Our trade networks handle 62% of all galactic commerce. Our technology drives 87% of all medical advances." "In other words," Admiral Taylor said, "they need us more than we need them?" "That's what we're about to find out, President." Carter replied. "Alex, I want you to start uploading everything. Every piece of technology we've shared, every scientific breakthrough, every innovation we've given them. If they want us gone, they can figure out how to replace what we've provided." Alex's fingers were already moving across his tablet. "Yes, Madam President, I'm accessing the central database now. Full upload will take approximately 6 hours." "Make it 4, President Carter said. "We need to move fast." Lisa walked back to the table. "What about our people?" "We have humans working in every major alien facility in the galaxy. Scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers. What happens to them?" "They come home," Admiral Taylor said firmly. "All of them. We leave nothing behind that the Council can use against." "Yes." Jake understood what was happening. This was not just a withdrawal. This was something much more complete. Humans were about to disappear from galactic civilization like smoke in the wind. And when they were gone, the aliens would discover just how much they had depended on human skills and knowledge. "Admiral, how long will it take to implement full withdrawal?" President Carter asked. Ben Taylor looked at something off-screen. "Probably a computer display." 43 hours if we move efficiently. Our ships are already spread across the galaxy. But most of our personnel can be extracted quickly. The challenge will be doing it quietly. "Quietly is the key," Jake said. "If they realize what we're doing before we're finished, they might try to stop us. Or take hostages." President Carter nodded. No dramatic speeches, no threats, no ultimatums. We simply pack up and leave like we're going on vacation. Alex was still working on his tablet. Lines of data scrolled past too fast for normal eyes to follow. I'm prioritizing the withdrawal of critical technologies. Fusion reactor designs, quantum communication systems, medical nanobots, agricultural improvements. The basics they'll need to keep their civilizations running. How long before they notice? Lisa asked. Depends on what breaks first, Alex replied. Some systems will fail within hours of our people leaving. Others might last weeks. But within a month, they'll be facing widespread infrastructure collapse. Admiral Taylor was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thoughtful. We could make this very painful for them. Sabotage systems before we leave. Introduce viruses into their computers. Make their transition much harder. No, President Carter said firmly. We're not vandals, we're not terrorists. We simply take back what is ours and leave them to manage what is theirs. Jake admired that decision. It would have been easy too. Hurt the aliens who were trying to hurt humanity. But taking the high road would make the final result much more powerful. When alien civilizations started collapsing, they would know it was their own fault, not the result of human sabotage. What about independent contractors? Lisa asked. Human companies that work for alien governments but aren't officially part of our diplomatic mission? Send them the withdrawal codes, Admiral Taylor said. Anyone with human citizenship gets the option to come home. We're not leaving anyone behind who wants to leave. Alex looked up from his tablet again. I'm seeing some interesting patterns in the data. Human-designed systems are integrated into alien infrastructure much more deeply than I realized. When we leave, it's not just going to be inconvenient. It's going to be catastrophic. Give me examples, President Carter said. Alex scrolled through screens of information. The Zelfin defense grid relies entirely on human targeting software. Without it, they can't shoot down incoming missiles. The hydrogen water purification plants use human-designed filters. Without replacement parts, billions of hydrants will face dehydration. The Corvin manufacturing systems use human efficiency. Algorithms. Without them, production will drop by 80%. And medical systems? Lisa asked. That's the big one, Alex replied. Human medical technology has been integrated into alien healthcare for over a decade. We've eliminated diseases that killed millions. We've developed surgical techniques that alien doctors consider miraculous. When our medical teams withdraw, alien mortality rates are going to skyrocket. The room was quiet for a moment as everyone absorbed that information. They were not just talking about political consequences or economic disruption. They were talking about alien civilians who would suffer because their leaders had made a bad decision. Is there any way to minimize civilian casualties? President Carter asked. Alex thought for a moment. We could leave behind basic medical supplies, maybe some instruction manuals. But without human personnel to maintain the systems and develop new treatments, the long-term result will be the same. Do it, President Carter decided. Leave what you can to help civilians. But bring home all the people and all the advanced technology. Admiral Taylor was making notes on his own device. I'll need to coordinate with ship captains across the galaxy. This has to happen simultaneously, or the aliens will catch on and try to stop us. How many human facilities are we talking about? Jake asked. Ben Taylor consulted his display again. 437 major installations. Research stations, manufacturing plants, medical centers, communication hubs, defense platforms, plus approximately 2,000 smaller operations. And personnel? 800,000 humans working in alien space, plus their families. We're looking at evacuating nearly 2 million people in less than 2 days, Lisa whistled softly. That's a lot of moving parts, which is why we need to start now, President Carter said. Admiral, give the order. Ambassador Morrison, you have operational command of all diplomatic assets. Dr. Turner, I want continuous updates on the data transfer. What about our response to the Council? Jake asked. President Carter smiled for the first time since the conversation began. Tell them we're considering their offer very carefully. Tell them we want to make sure we understand all the implications. Buy us as much time as possible. The holographic images of the President and Admiral began to flicker as the quantum connection prepared to close. Remember, President Carter said, this isn't about revenge. This is about dignity. We're showing them what the galaxy looks like without humanity. After that, they can decide if they want us back. The display went dark. The three humans sat in the quiet conference room, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Alex spoke. You know, it's funny. They think they're punishing us. But we're the ones who are about to be free. Captain Roy Henderson stood on the observation deck of Research Station Alpha, watching the last supply ship dock with his facility. The station hung in space above Proxima 7 like a giant metal flower. Its arms reached out in all directions, each one filled with laboratories and living quarters. For 5 years, this place had been his home. Roy was a big man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been a ship captain for 20 years before taking command of the research station. The crew respected him because he was fair and smart. Now he was about to make the hardest decision of his career. The communication device on his belt buzzed. Roy touched it and heard the voice of Admiral Ben Taylor coming from Earth. Captain Henderson, you have your orders. How long do you need? Roy looked around the observation deck. Through the windows he could see the planet below. Proxima 7 was covered in purple oceans and green continents. 20 million Krillians lived on the surface. Their cities glowed like jewels in the darkness. For the past month, his team had been working on an energy crisis that threatened to destroy their civilization. 18 hours, Admiral, Roy replied. My people need time to pack their personal belongings and transfer the research data. Understood. Remember, Captain, nothing gets left behind that could help them solve their problems without us. Roy felt a pain in his chest. The Krillians were good people. They had families and children and dreams just like humans. The energy solution his team had developed would save millions of lives, but those lives were not his responsibility anymore. What about the cure for Altarian fever? Roy asked. Dr. Murphy just finished the final tests yesterday. It works perfectly. There was a pause before Admiral Taylor answered. Take it with you, Captain. Earth's orders are clear. All research comes home. Roy ended the communication and walked to the main laboratory. Dr. Sean Murphy was there, staring at a computer screen that showed test results. Sean was young, maybe 30 years old, with red hair and freckles. He looked like he had not slept in days. How many lives would the cure save? Roy asked quietly. Sean looked up with tired eyes. Altarian fever kills about 50,000 Krillians every year. With this cure, we could reduce that number to almost zero. The treatment is simple and cheap to make. Pack it up, Roy said. We're taking everything with us. Sean's face went pale. Sir, if we take the cure and don't share it, those people will die. Children will die. Roy understood how Sean felt. He felt the same way. But orders were orders. The council made their choice, Doctor. They wanted us gone. Now they get to live with the consequences. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out on hundreds of human facilities. On the industrial world of Kepler 442b, plant manager, Steve Collins was shutting down the fusion reactors that powered 3 continents. Steve was a practical man who had spent his life making things work. Now he was making them stop working. The fusion reactors were human designs that had been built with human technology. The local Vraxian engineers had learned to operate them, but they did not understand how they really worked. When the reactors shut down, the Vraxians would not be able to restart them. Steve's assistant, a Vraxian named Kextol, watched nervously as human technicians began disconnecting critical components. Kextol looked like a walking tree with many arms. His bark-like skin was gray with worry. Manager Collins, Kextol said in his creaky voice, surely you are not taking all the reactor cores? How will we maintain power to the cities? Steve continued supervising the shutdown procedures. You'll need to contact your government, Kextol. This is beyond my authority now. But 3 billion Vraxians depend on these reactors for electricity. Without power, our civilization will collapse. Steve felt sorry for Kextel. The alien had worked with humans for 8 years. He was honest and hardworking and decent, but Steve had his orders. "I'm sorry," Steve said. "You have 48 hours of backup power. After that, you'll need to find other solutions." At the Galactic Communication Hub on Tau Ceti, technician Carol Martinez was disconnecting the quantum relay systems that allowed instant communication across the galaxy. Carol was a small woman with black hair and quick hands. She could repair communication equipment that other technicians said was impossible to fix. The quantum relays were entirely human inventions. The aliens had been using primitive radio signals before humans joined the galaxy. Those old systems took months to send messages between distant stars. The quantum network reduced that time to seconds. Carol worked carefully, removing each component in the proper sequence. The alien technicians watched her but did not understand what she was doing. They had learned to operate the system but not to build or repair it. "Carol," said her Zelthan supervisor, a snake-like creature named Siskara, "why are you removing the primary relays?" "The network will fail without them." Carol did not look up from her work. "Orders from Earth, all human. Technology is being recalled for inspection." "But what about the trade communications? The emergency channels? The diplomatic networks?" "You'll need to contact the Council," Carol replied. "I'm sure they'll figure something out." Siskara's yellow eyes showed panic. The communication network was the backbone of galactic civilization. Without it, the galaxy would be cut off from itself. Individual worlds would be isolated. Trade would collapse. Military coordination would be impossible. On the Joint Defense Station at Volf 359, Commander Lisa Brooks was overseeing the evacuation of human personnel. The station was a massive structure that protected 7 different alien homeworlds from pirate raids and hostile invasions. It had the most advanced weapons and sensors in the galaxy, all designed and built by humans. Lisa walked through the command center, watching her people pack up equipment and delete computer files. The alien officers stood around looking confused and worried. They had always assumed the station would continue operating regardless of political changes. General Thokvaran, a 4-armed Korvan who commanded the alien troops, approached Lisa with heavy steps. His rocky face showed deep concern. "Commander Brooks," he rumbled, "my government has not authorized the withdrawal of human forces. This station protects my homeworld and 6 others. Without your people, we cannot defend against the Mordaki raiders." Lisa continued checking her evacuation lists. "General, my orders come from Earth High Command. All human military personnel are being recalled immediately. But the defense protocols, the targeting systems, the early warning networks, these are all human designs. We do not know how to operate them without your technicians." "Then I suggest you learn quickly," Lisa said without emotion. "The Mordaki have been quiet for 6 months, but intelligence reports suggest they're planning a major offensive. You have maybe 2 weeks before they attack." General Thokvaran S4 arms spread wide in a gesture of desperation. 2 weeks is not enough time to train new operators. My people will die." Lisa finally looked up at him. Her green eyes were cold as winter. "General, your people demanded that humans submit to council oversight or leave the galaxy. We chose to leave." "Everything that happens after that is your responsibility, not ours." Meanwhile, on the medical station orbiting Vega Prime, Dr. Nina Wells was transferring all human-developed treatments and medical technologies to isolated servers. Nina was a brilliant doctor who had spent 15 years developing cures for diseases that had plagued alien races for centuries. The station was the galaxy's premier medical facility. Patients came from across known space to receive treatments that were available nowhere else. Most of those treatments had been developed by human medical teams. Dr. Veshinari, a blue-skinned Ashanti who served as the station's alien administrator, watched nervously as Nina packed sensitive medical equipment into transport containers. "Dr. Wells," Veshinari said in her musical voice, "surely you cannot remove the nanobotic cancer treatment systems." We have 3,000 patients currently undergoing therapy. Nina sealed another container of medical supplies. The current patients will be fine. The nanobots in their systems will complete the treatment cycle. But no new patients can be treated without the human medical team. And the Hydron Plague vaccine? The Corvan genetic therapy protocols? The Zelthan neural regeneration treatments? All human intellectual property, Nina replied. All coming back to Earth. Vashinary's blue face turned pale. Doctor, millions of people depend on these treatments. Without them, we will see a return of diseases that have been eliminated for decades. Nina felt the weight of that responsibility. Every container she packed represented thousands of lives that might be lost, but the Council had made their choice. They had decided that human innovation was too dangerous to tolerate. You should contact your government, Nina said softly. Maybe they can negotiate with Earth for continued medical cooperation, but Nina knew that would not happen. The Council had burned that bridge when they demanded humanity's surrender. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated itself. Human cargo. Ships completed their current deliveries but did not pick up new contracts. Human manufacturers finished existing orders but closed their factories. Human researchers published their final papers but took their equipment with them. The withdrawal was methodical and complete. Humans did not shout or make threats. They simply gathered their belongings and walked away. The emergency alarm echoed through the Galactic Council chambers like the cry of a dying animal. Councillor Vexthara slithered quickly toward her seat, her green scales catching the flashing red lights. Her yellow eyes showed something she had not felt in centuries: fear. The great chamber was only half full. Many council members could not attend because their worlds were facing disasters. The Hydron representative was missing because his homeworld's communication systems had failed. The Corvan delegate had not arrived because their ships could not navigate without human-built guidance computers. Vexthara reached her position at the center of the High Council and activated her speaking device. Her voice filled the chamber, but it no longer carried the confidence it had 3 days ago. Emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session, she announced. We face the most serious crisis in our recorded history. On the main display screen, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Red symbols marked worlds in crisis. Yellow symbols showed planets with critical problems. Green symbols, which meant everything was normal, had almost disappeared from the map. Councillor Zephyroon struggled to his speaking platform. The Hydron leader looked terrible. His gray skin was dry and cracked. His breathing mask made harsh sounds as he tried to get enough oxygen. Water no longer dripped from his body because there was no water to spare. 17 Hydron worlds have lost their water purification systems, he gasped. 2 billion of my people face dehydration within the week. Our reserve supplies are nearly gone. Without human technicians to restart the filtration plants, my entire species could die. Murmurs of shock ran through the chamber. The Hydrons were one of the oldest and most stable races in the galaxy. If they could face extinction in a matter of days, what did that mean for everyone else? Councillor Thekmore spoke next. The rocky Corvan's voice was even more gravelly than usual. His forearms moved in gestures of helplessness. Our manufacturing capacity has dropped 92%. Our ships cannot navigate between stars. Our mining operations have stopped completely. My people are facing economic collapse and possible starvation. The reports continued. Each one was worse than the last. The Ashanti Confederation was dealing with outbreaks of diseases that had been eliminated for 50 years. The Vrexian Empire had lost power on 12 major worlds. The Zelthan Republic's defense systems had failed completely, leaving them vulnerable to their ancient enemies, but the worst news came from the Outer Rim worlds. Commander Grixtel of the Mordaki Defense Force stood up slowly. He was a small, furry creature with large ears and nervous eyes. His voice shook as he spoke. The Mordaki swarm has begun their offensive. They attacked the Volf 359 defense station 6 hours ago. Without human tactical systems and early warning networks, we could not detect them until they were already firing. The station has fallen. Three worlds are now under direct assault. A wave of panic swept through the chamber. The Mordaki were savage raiders who had been kept in check for decades by superior defensive technology. The technology had been designed and operated by humans. Now it was gone. Vexthara tried to maintain order, but her own voice betrayed her. Growing desperation. Surely the humans can be reasoned with. They must have some price for returning to their posts. On the communication screen, Jake Morrison's face appeared. He looked calm and professional, exactly the same as he had 3 days ago. Behind him, Lisa Brooks and Alex Turner stood quietly. They all wore the blue uniforms of the human diplomatic corps. Ambassador Morrison, Vexthara said, trying to keep her voice steady. The Council formally requests an immediate halt to the human withdrawal. We are prepared to discuss new terms for your continued membership. Jake's expression did not change. Counselor Vexthara, humanity appreciates your concern. However, we are simply following the Council's instructions. You made it clear that our presence was unwanted and our capabilities were feared. We are complying with your wishes. But the crisis situations across the galaxy, Zephyroon interrupted. Billions of innocent civilians are at risk. Surely humanity does not want to see mass casualties. Humanity has always valued civilian lives, Jake replied. That is why we spent decades sharing our medical knowledge, our agricultural techniques, and our safety protocols with all Council races. We believe that cooperation made everyone stronger. Alex Turner stepped forward slightly. In his hands was a data tablet that glowed with information. The Council has our complete records of every technology transfer, every scientific breakthrough, and every system design we have shared over the past 23 years. Your own scientists and engineers should be able to maintain and operate these systems. But everyone in the chamber knew that was not true. The aliens had learned to use human technology, but they had not learned to understand it. They had become dependent on human expertise without developing their own capabilities. Counselor, Vexthara's voice took on a pleading tone that no one had ever heard before. Ambassador, what would it take for humanity to reconsider? What are your terms? Jake was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his words were carefully chosen. Humanity has no terms, Counselor. We are not negotiating. We are not making demands. We are simply respecting the Council's decision about our membership. But you could save millions of lives by returning, Vekmar rumbled. Does that mean nothing to you? Lisa Brooks stepped forward this time. Her green eyes were cold as space. General Vekmar, where was your concern for civilian lives when you demanded that humanity surrender all our defensive capabilities? Where was your worry about innocent people when you threatened to expel us from galactic civilization? The chamber fell silent. The aliens had no answer to that question. Jake continued speaking in his calm, professional voice. For 23 years, humanity worked to make the galaxy a better place. We shared our innovations freely. We solved problems that had existed for centuries. We asked for nothing in return except to be treated as equals. You are equals, Vexthara protested. The Council never said otherwise. The Council demanded that we surrender our military, our technology, and our independence, Alex Turner replied. You wanted us to become subjects, not equals. You made that very clear. On planets across the galaxy, the situation was getting worse by the hour. On Proxima 7, the Krillian government was facing energy riots as cities lost power. On Kepler 442b, Vraxian factories sat empty and silent. On Vega Prime, hospitals could no longer treat patients with diseases that had been routine to cure just days before. Emergency broadcasts filled communication channels that still worked. Alien leaders begged their populations to remain calm while they searched for solutions that did not exist. Some worlds were already seeing the collapse of basic services. Like transportation and food distribution, the Mordaki swarm was taking advantage of the chaos. Their raider fleets swept through undefended systems, destroying everything they could not steal. Without human tactical coordination and early warning systems, the Council races could not mount an effective defense. Reports arrived that the Mordaki had captured 4 more worlds in the past 12 hours. Their assault ships were heading toward the heavily populated core systems. If they reached those worlds, billions would die. Counselor Grickstall was crying now, tears streaming down his furry face. "Please," he begged Jake Morrison's image on the screen. "My children live on Centauri Prime. The Mordaki will reach that system in 18 hours. Without your defense protocols, we cannot stop them." Jake's face showed a flash of genuine sadness. "Counselor Grickstall, humanity deeply regrets the suffering that is occurring. But these are the consequences of the Council's choice, not ours. We were wrong," Vexthora said suddenly. The words seemed to tear out of her throat. "The Council was wrong to demand your submission. We were afraid of your growing power, and fear made us act foolishly." "Is that what you want to hear?" "What humanity wants to hear," Jake replied, "is irrelevant. What matters is what you choose to do next." Zephyroon leaned forward desperately. "What do we do? How do we fix this?" Jake looked around the chamber, his eyes taking in the faces of leaders who had once seemed so powerful and confident. Now they looked like lost children asking adults to solve their problems. "You learn," Jake said simply. "You figure out how to maintain your own systems and solve your own problems. You take responsibility for your own civilizations instead of depending on others to do the work for you." "But that will take years," Beckmore protested. "Maybe decades. How many will die while we learn?" "That," Jake said quietly, "is something the Council should have considered 3 days ago." The communication link went dark. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in their seats like children who had just been told there was no one coming to save them. Outside the chamber, the galaxy continued its slide toward chaos. But in human space, far from the Council worlds, a different story was unfolding. Human colonies that had been recalled were thriving. Human ships that had been withdrawn were exploring new regions of space. Human scientists who had been taken away from alien projects were making discoveries that would have seemed impossible just weeks before. Humanity was not just surviving without the Council. They were growing stronger. 6 months had passed since the humans walked away from the Galactic Council. The galaxy looked very different now. Where once there had been thousands of thriving alien worlds connected by trade and communication, now there were isolated clusters of struggling civilizations trying to rebuild what they had lost. President Helen Carter stood on the observation deck of the new human capital ship Liberty. Through the massive windows, she could see the blue and green world of Kepler 186f spinning slowly below. This planet, far from Council space, had become the unofficial capital of human civilization. Cities sprawled across the continents like glowing webs. Ships moved between orbital stations like busy insects. Helen was older now, with more gray in her hair and deeper lines around her eyes. But she looked stronger too, like someone who had faced a great challenge and survived it. Behind her stood Admiral Ben Taylor, his uniform now bearing the insignia of the Human Space Command. His ships patrolled space that no alien vessel had ever seen. "Madam President," Admiral Taylor said quietly, "we're receiving another transmission from the Council. Counselor Zephyroon is requesting immediate humanitarian assistance for the Hydran homeworld." Helen did not turn away from the window. "What's the situation there?" "Water purification systems are failing across 3 continents. They've managed to jury-rig some temporary solutions, but their death toll is approaching 2 million. They're offering to pay any price for our technical assistance." Helen was quiet for a moment. The old Helen Carter, the senator who had spent decades working for galactic cooperation, would have immediately ordered help sent. But the president who had watched aliens demand humanity's surrender was a different person. "Send medical supplies," she decided. "Basic water purification tablets, emergency rations, temporary shelter materials. But no personnel, no technology transfers. No permanent solutions," Admiral Taylor nodded. "Understood. The supply ships can be there in 48 hours. And Admiral," Helen added, "make sure our ships leave immediately after delivery. No extended contact, no negotiations. This had become the standard human response to alien requests for help. Basic humanitarian aid to prevent mass casualties, but nothing that would solve the underlying problems. The aliens had to learn to fix their own civilizations. On Kepler 186f, human society was flourishing in ways that surprised even the humans themselves. Dr. Alex Turner walked through the halls of the new Geneva Research Institute, watching scientists work on projects that would have been impossible under council oversight. The building was made of gleaming metal and crystal, but it felt warm and alive with human energy. Alex stopped at one laboratory where Dr. Susan Walsh was testing a new type of faster-than-light communication system. Susan was young and brilliant, with short black hair and intense brown eyes. She had joined the human diplomatic corps just before the withdrawal, but now she was free to pursue pure research. "How's the project coming?" Alex asked. Susan looked up from her equipment with excitement. "Better than expected. We're achieving instantaneous communication across distances that would take the old quantum relays hours to bridge. The applications are incredible. Will it work for a long-range exploration?" "Alex, this technology could let us coordinate colonies on the other side of the galaxy in real time. We could explore regions that the Council never even dreamed of reaching." This was happening in laboratories across human space. Without alien oversight and restrictions, human science was advancing at an unprecedented pace. The withdrawal from Council space had not weakened humanity. It had set them free to reach their full potential. Meanwhile, in the ruins of Council space, alien civilizations struggled to survive. The Galactic Council still met, but their chamber was mostly empty. Now, many member races had withdrawn from galactic politics to focus on their own survival. Others had simply stopped responding to Council communications. Councillor Vexthara sat alone in the great chamber, staring at the empty seats around her. Her green scales had lost their shine. Her yellow eyes were dim with exhaustion. She had sent dozens of messages to the human government, each one more desperate than the last. None had received the response she hoped for. The main display screen showed the current state of the galaxy. Red symbols marked dead worlds where civilization had collapsed completely. Yellow symbols showed planets barely maintaining basic services. The few green symbols were clustered around worlds that had managed to develop their own solutions to replace human technology. A communication alert sounded. Vexthara activated the system with a trembling hand, hoping it might be a response from President Carter. Instead, the image of Councillor Thekmer appeared on the screen. The Corven leader looked terrible. His rocky skin was cracked and dusty. Two of his forearms hung uselessly at his sides. "Councillor Vexthara," Thekmer said in a voice like grinding stone, "I must report that the Corven Empire is formally withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We can no longer maintain our obligations to the Alliance." Vexthara felt her heart sink even further. "Thekmer, surely we can find a solution. The humans have provided some humanitarian aid. Perhaps we can negotiate for more assistance." "There is no solution," Thekmer replied. "My industrial worlds are operating at 12% capacity. My people are facing starvation. My government is collapsing. We must focus all our resources on basic survival." The communication ended, leaving Vexthara alone again. She knew that similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. The Galactic Council, which had existed for over 3,000 years, was dying, but in human space a very different kind of meeting was taking place. The conference room on Kepler 186f was filled with representatives from dozens of human colonies. Some attended in person, while others appeared as holographic projections from distant worlds. Captain Roy Henderson, now serving as colonial administrator for the Proxima system, was presenting his latest report. Resource extraction is up 30% from pre-withdrawal levels. Our agricultural colonies are producing surplus food for the first time in decades. Population growth is accelerating on all settled worlds. Commander Lisa Brooks, who had been promoted to head of human colonial security, added her own assessment. "We've had no hostile contact with alien forces in 4 months. Our expanded patrol networks have identified 17 new star systems suitable for colonization. We're also tracking several alien refugee fleets that appear to be fleeing Council space. President Carter, attending the meeting via hologram from Earth, listened to these reports with satisfaction. What about contact from individual alien species? Not the Council, but independent governments? That's the interesting development, Lisa replied. We've received formal diplomatic overtures from 6 different species. They're asking about bilateral trade agreements and mutual defense pacts. None of them mention the Council. This was exactly what President Carter had hoped would happen. The withdrawal from Council space had not isolated humanity. It had forced other species to approach humans as equals rather than subjects. Dr. Alex Turner stood up to address the group. I've been analyzing the long-term implications of our separation from Council space. The data suggests that we're not just surviving without them. We're advancing faster than we ever did as Council members. He activated a holographic display that showed human technological progress over the past 6 months. The charts and graphs painted a remarkable picture of innovation and growth. Medical advances are up 400%. Engineering breakthroughs have increased by 300%. Our exploration range has expanded by 2,000%. In every measurable category, human civilization is stronger now than it was under Council oversight. President Carter smiled. And what about the individual species that have contacted us? Several show real promise, Alex replied. The Centaurians have developed some interesting agricultural techniques that could benefit our food production. The Altarians have mining technologies that we lack. The Tausetians have artistic traditions that could enrich our culture. All based on mutual respect and equal partnership, Lisa added. No one is demanding that we surrender our independence in exchange for membership in their organizations. The meeting continued for several hours, covering everything from trade, policy to exploration planning to cultural exchange programs. What struck President Carter was how optimistic everyone sounded. During the Council years, human meetings had often focused on restrictions and limitations. Now they talked about possibilities and opportunities. Meanwhile, on the dying worlds of Council space, alien leaders finally began to understand what they had lost. The humans had not just been useful partners, they had been the driving force. Behind galactic civilization's growth and prosperity, Councillor Zephyroon, speaking to what remained of the Hydran government, tried to explain the magnitude of their mistake. We thought human innovation was dangerous because it was changing our traditional ways. We didn't realize that change was exactly what we needed to survive and grow. On Corvan worlds, industrial archaeologists were trying to reverse engineer human manufacturing systems. The work was slow and difficult. What humans had designed in months was taking Corvan engineers years to understand.